It's your weekly breakaway for fun conversations on pro cycling and so much more. Join us as we go beyond the slipstream. I'm Matt Harper, and together with my brother Justin, we'll do deep-ish dives on bike races, movies, bands, and all manner of shiny pop cultural objects. Oh, and did I mention bike races? We're kind of obsessed. Allez! Hello and welcome to Beyond the Slipstream. I'm Matt and this is my brother Justin, and today in our first two segments we'll be diving into all of the racing action from this past weekend at the biggest of the Dutch classics, Amstel Gold, starting with the women's race in segment 1 and the men's in segment 2. And in our third segment we're taking a glassy-eyed look at the state of marijuana in America. And no Beyond the Slipstream podcast would be complete without a ride in the magical mystery Broom Wagon, man. Ale! Please note, this segment contains spoilers. If you wish to remain unspoiled, please jump ahead to segment 2. In 2017, when the women's pro peloton gained the Amstel Gold race back after a 14-year hiatus, the team Boels-Dolman, that is today's SD Works, took a big win with their biggest rider, Anna van der Breggen. In the ensuing years, the team's fortunes at the race have been up and down. They won the race twice more, in 2018 with Chantal van den Broek-Blok, and again in 2023 with Demi Vollering. And their Amstel Gold hat trick should have been completed last year, but a foolish Lorena Wiebes, the team's winning machine sprinter, was pipped on the line by wily veteran and goat of the women's peloton, Marianne Vos, when Wiebes sat up to celebrate the win prematurely. This race saw them get their redemption, but not in the form most would have imagined. And while Wiebes could only manage 6th in the best of the rest sprint, and team co-superstar Lotte Kopecky was light years behind in 34th alongside recent luminaries Elisa Longo Borghini and Pauline Ferrand-Prévot, SD Works still got the win in the form of Misha Bredewald, a Dutch woman whose biggest win prior to this was the 2023 European Road Race Championship. Justin, SD Works is just one of those teams that finds a way to win when the big races are on the line. What did they do right in this race?
They had riders placed in all the right places whenever they needed them, and when Little Trek made their move, she was right there. And even though the superstars weren't there, it's just like UAE, where they have this amazing amount of depth. Once the big stars become the non-factor, the third the third up is still just as good enough to win the race. And it felt like, especially, I don't know, that move went away so quietly. Like, it was like no one responded, and then all of a sudden they were just gone enough that they weren't getting caught.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with your initial sentiment. It's positioning, having the riders where they need to be. These super teams, it seems, are able to always have representation in the front, be it in the front group or in the second or the third group. And in so many of these races, it's like Wiebes especially, I think, is just becoming just such a better rider. As silly as that sounds, it's like she has learned to be effective in every race she gets in, no matter whether she's in it for the win or for the team.
She was there. She was in that big group. She had every opportunity to be in the mix in the end. But it obviously must have been pretty hard because, some really good riders, really didn't, weren't a factor in this race. I give Misha a lot of credit because, it was, she was out there. She was gone at the end. She had bested those two, no problem.
But having Wiebes behind her like that allowed her to sit on Van Dyke's wheel until the time came when she felt it was the right time for her to make her move. Um, and that's just what I'm saying. I mean, they're always like there or thereabouts, ready to strike, threatening, giving their lead the riders in the front the opportunity to sit on because they've got representation behind it. I mean, it's just I don't know, it continues to be like an embarrassment of riches. But it is nice to see the wins getting spread around, and I
Hmm.
certainly enjoyed the enthusiasm and just the happiness coming through on the part of Bredevald.
The
Pretty
end of that, I
pretty.
mean, the like immediate post race stuff. There were some great moments. Um, when Puck Peterson came up and like gave her an embrace that you would have thought she was a teammate.
I know, I love it. I love it.
Like, there's a couple of other thing like notes that I want to make a point, but if you want to talk about the race itself, the stuff I want to talk about has to do with after the race, which was some pretty funny stuff.
Well, it was kind of a quiet breakaway when her and Van Dyke finally went away, um, and then her attack was as far from flamboyant or withering or thermonuclear or anything. She just kind of, you know, she
Got
she attacked
separation and
hard.
just kept
Yeah, she hit
separating.
her hard. I mean, she didn't just like slowly like Joao Almeida away from her. She threw an attack. She was behind. Boom. She came around. She came around fast. But her initial separation wasn't that far away. Like um, and she hung on for the win basically. I don't feel like there's a ton to talk about. What do you got from the from the afterwards?
So that moment between Puck Peterson and her was just so adorable. Um, Obviously they must be friends. Like, you know what I mean? They must be friends outside of racing. Um,
I'm sure they're both on the Dutch national team.
yeah.
I'm sure they, you
So,
know,
but I loved seeing that. I loved seeing three Dutch riders in the only like all Dutch classic race.
yeah, the Dutch triple.
Yeah, so great. Um,
They show up. They show up for their home race. That's for sure.
so at the end, obviously, Amstel Gold is a beer, and they do the trophy presentation. Which, by the way, that trophy looked heavy as hell. Like that thing was gigantic.
Yeah.
Um, but they gave them all beers. Okay. And
Hmm.
what a juxtaposition, the ladies race to the men's race, which I will spoil what happened in the men's race. So uh, Ellen, Puck, and Misha all drink their beers completely, finish them. They do the cheers. They,
How big would you say were these like ten
they were
ounce beers,
pints.
12-ounce
I would
beers,
say they were
pints?
pints. I would say they
Nice.
looked like pints.
Hell yeah.
Um, Take them right down, all three of them. Boom, gone.
I love it.
On the men's side, Remco and Matej Skamos didn't touch them. Now I can't remember. Are they both? They're not. They're not both under 21, right?
There's no way.
Yeah, right.
It's
It's
no
like
problem.
there's just no way. Pogachar though, Pogachar drank his beer.
He drank it. He's a fun one.
Absolutely,
He's a fun one.
absolutely. Made me give props to Pog. Uh, yeah. So I thought that was very interesting that the three Dutch riders slammed those Dutch beers, no problem.
That's rad. That's
Yeah, it
rad.
was rad.
Um,
Super rad.
I have to say, like, it's cool the way they added the Cauberg back in. Um, I thought it was interesting that the women did it like 5 times or 7 times or something like that, but the men only did it 3 times. I feel like that almost never happens. Um, but it's just
Probably had
interesting the
more to
way
do with
they,
the fact that it was 100 Ks less than the men's race is what I'm thinking.
yeah, yeah, and I'm sure there's like lots of other factors. I mean, these, I find these races so fascinating the more I get to know about like how the maps and stuff are laid out because it's like they're they're these like spider webs of roads. You know what I mean? It's not this long thing, that just stretches out over the land. It's like a whole spider web of roads. And it's like they got this thing figured out. It goes up here and around here and down here and through here, and then it goes back through there. And like it's these things are like crisscrossing and zigzagging. And I feel like there's got to be people out there at certain corners and crossings and stuff where it's like, okay, that was the last of the thing. Now we got to change these because in like 45 minutes they're going to be coming down this road this time, but they're going to have to go. You know what I mean? Like
Oh
they got
yeah.
to switch stuff up and to flag people. You know what I mean? Like within the race. Whereas I would think like the Tour de France and stuff, like they must have those roads like marked out and cordoned off and everything, like days in advance. It seems
Well,
I'm fascinated by the
I would
mechanics of
assume
it.
that the roads with the Tour de France are closed for the entire day, or at
Hmm.
least for the entirety of the race. You know what I mean? Like they probably only open back up once the race is like fully gone by. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I would assume that from probably 9 a.m. until the race comes through on any given day on the tour, that those roads are closed. And I would assume that like on a time trial that those roads are just 100% closed the entirety of the race.
Yeah. Yeah. But nonetheless, super cool parkour. I mean, the way that whole road is just, it's not just lined with people. I don't know if you're noticing, but like, especially in the lower portions of the Cauberg, when they first turn onto it, the crowd is like 40 people deep on either side. I mean, these are like just massive crowds
They did
all
that
over the
one
place.
shot where they like where the bridge goes over the thing and there's like so many people like over
Yeah, it's just like
like
lined with people. They're everywhere.
yeah.
Like what a freaking party that day must be.
Oh yeah.
For me, any trip to the Netherlands, it has to be planned around that fucking race.
I would wholeheartedly agree.
Gotta go.
That is one that it seems like it would be a ton of fun. Same with Strada Bianchi. That's one that like stands out in my mind where I'm like, damn, I'd
Yeah.
really like to be there for that race. But yeah, this one I guarantee. I mean, especially considering that the main sponsor is a beer sponsor. Here
Hmm.
is a beer company. Is I'm sure that it's just a party the whole way through.
Absolutely. So, um, I have to comment at least briefly on Bredewald's speech. If you notice, she kind of gave the sort of the less emotional version of the Matty Mahoric MSR speech.
Hmm.
She talked about um, having a tough week and a mentally difficult week, and the guy asked her, like, what do you, how so, how was this week tough for you mentally or whatever? And she said, I wrote it down here. She said, top sport is not easy. It's doubting and it's struggling. You put so much time, effort, and emotion into it, and sometimes it doesn't fall in the right place, and it almost seems unfair. And it's just, it's just wild how these things go. Just the roller coaster, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. That she could have been so down, 3, 4, 5 days ago, and just feeling miserable and just in a dark, dark place. And now she's won Amstel Gold, like her home race. Like that makes her she'll never buy another Amstel, have to buy another Amstel again for the rest of her life. She just won herself free Amstels for life because she'll never buy. Yeah, So um, I love that.
Did you find it interesting that Anna van der Breggen left the race early on?
I didn't even know that until you mentioned it this very second.
Yep.
I found it interesting that Demi Vollering was not a factor in this race
Lada Kopecky
because
wasn't a factor in this race.
I know. Kopecky was back there with
I mean, she was in that group for a minute, and then once that move went, it just didn't seem like any of the top riders like even you know tried to even go for it. Like it was weird to me that like it, you know they would, especially like the fact that they would let that those guys would let Puck Peterson go, and they never let Puck Peterson go without like answering an attack. Like
Hmm.
it was, it was an odd group to have those three of them end up being the ones that pulled it off in the end. You know what I mean?
Maybe it speaks to the stature of the race, and they're just the Kopeckis and the Longoborghinis and the Vollerings of the world are just like, it's not a monument. I got Liège passed on Liège last week. I just killed myself in Roubaix last week. Um,
Yeah.
like I just I can't push myself too hard. If I'm
Plus,
not
maybe
certain that I'm
and
gonna win.
we don't know that they maybe she was like, I want this race, and maybe they were like, yeah, you can have this race. If Weebus isn't there and you are, then it's yours to win.
Possibly,
Especially
possibly.
considering that Anna von der Breggen wasn't there. So
Chris Horner was going off that this is without question the sixth monument. Like, it's so funny because everybody calls Strada Bianchi the sixth monument, but he was just like, this race, it's always great. The parkour is always great. The crowds are always great. This is the one. Like, this is the one. And
well, I
you got
mean,
your you got your
we talked
Italy.
about last year's ending for a year.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
know what I mean? It
And then
gives
you
us
get
this race gives you great moments. It's a great race. I had a blast watching the men's race live, and I had just as much fun watching the women's race in replay. But man, it's a great race, and there's always
hmm
great riders in it too. It's a great group of like possibilities in it. And then when you get the results that we got this year, it's I don't know, man. It's definitely up there, and it's definitely a top, probably three so far this year for me.
it's because its nature lends it to a host of different kinds of riders that can possibly win. And that's, I think, the beauty of the thing. Well, let's cap it there because we're the Amstel talk will be continuing momentarily with the men's race. So, anything else on the women?
Nope, that's it.
All right, stick with us. We will be back in a few. Please note this segment contains spoilers. If you wish to remain unspoiled, please jump ahead to segment 3. Once again, the 2025 men's Amstel Gold Race, the greatest of the Ardennes classics, gave us fireworks on the finish line, with longshot Matthias Skelmos of Lidl Trek somehow besting reigning world champion Tadej Pogacar and recently returned to racing Olympic champion Remco Evenepoel in a three-up sprint to the line. Evenepoel was racing for only the second time this year, having beaten his formless but nonetheless threatening countryman Wout van Aert just 2 days prior in a two-up sprint finish at the Brabantse Pale, an Amstel Gold warm-up race. Pogacar's spring has been nothing to slouch at either, with a GC win at the UAE Tour, a monument win at the Tour of Flanders, and three other wins, including Strade Bianche. But shockingly, Pog looked vulnerable and Remco just didn't have it in the legs, and Skelmos squeaked onto the top step of the podium with a perfectly timed bike throw just inches ahead of Pogacar's rainbow jersey. Justin, Skelmos won the first pro bike race we ever attended in person, the 2023 Maryland Cycling Classic, and he will always be our ride or die. How happy did this win make you?
I was absolutely freaking out. Again, uh, I was able to watch it live. We had done some recording earlier in the morning, and Uh, I had jumped out at like 40K to go do something in the kitchen when Pog was like, clearly like looked like he was going away. I was like, you know, Easter stuff. I needed to go do a couple things. And I came back and they were about 20 seconds back, Skelmos and Remco. And Pog was doing something that that don't see him do a lot. He was kept looking back, kept looking over his shoulder. And I'm looking at the two of them, and they're working pretty well together. And I'm watching Pog make all these moves, these looks back. And I just had a feeling. I was like, they're going to catch him. Like they are absolutely, they're going to catch him. Like he's not making the race winning move that you normally see, which is him just in that hard seated cadence where he just like is just cranking. You know, you rarely see him like side eyeing and looking back, but he was. And I think every time he did it, he cost himself a second or two. And when those guys caught, it was like around 8K or maybe just shot, like right, you know, it was like right there, but they like grouped up right around 8K. And I said to myself, I was like, oh man, Skelmos. And I actually had John, I called John in the room and I was like, you need to come watch this. I was like, you know, here's the three riders. And I was like, man, I got a feeling about Skelmos. I was like, you know, I think they could sleep on him. You need to come in here and watch this. And sure enough, if he doesn't end up pulling it out on the line, I was going absolutely crazy. I could not believe it. I was like, of all the people to beat Pogacar that are in the Pro Peloton, I love this guy. All right. Yes, the personal connection of seeing him win the first race that, you know, that we ever got to attend together. Um, just, I couldn't have been more excited for him. Like, what a great race. What a guy that deserves it. He was gracious. I love the fact that he dropped like 5 F-bombs in his interview. Yeah, it was great. How did you feel?
I was super stoked as well. I have to give a shout out to uh, the Rob and Adam call because as much as it sucks to, you know, watch bike races on the site with all the ads, um, you do get the advantage of, you know, clearly that guy's getting some kind of feed out of Europe, um, and so he's pulling the Eurosport thing. When we're watching on Max or on Peacock or whatever, we're getting, you know, the Americanized whatever. We're getting Yosei Bain. Um, and listening to the Rob and Adam call, it's just like so pleasant because those cats were getting me so hype in the last 10K. They were like just like licking their chops with anticipation. I mean, this is what was so great about this race is you had a Tadej Pogacar who did not look like himself. I mean, he was giving the illusion of himself. He jumped out and got that, you know, long distance kind of breakaway and, you know, rode away when they were going up a climb and it looked like, oh, here we go again.
I'm
And
telling you, I
and yet
thought it to myself.
almost from word go after he made his move, he's looking back. He's looking uncomfortable. He's not looking like the all powerful soul destroying Tadej Pogacar. You could almost tell from the get go, and Adam and Rom could as well. And we got to see this just like slowly playing out catch with Skelmos and Remco back there, and just that part of it is so tantalizing as well. With Remco coming off of a win 2 days ago in his first race back, you're like, wait, could this guy be on some crazy like super form? What's going on? It was so good.
I don't think Skelmos wins if it's not him there in as the other rider. I think that the two of them pushed each other very, very hard to bring him back. And I think that they worked really, really well together. And especially towards the end, Pogacar was like not trying to take a turn at all. Like he was trying to stay second or third wheel that whole way. And, you know, I just, Skelmos just timed his whole move just perfectly because he knew exactly what they were going to do. Like they did exactly what you expected, and they slept on him, and they just let him get so quietly in the right spot at the right time that when it came down and they were heads up, you could see that they were like equally matched. And when he kind of came around to that far side, you know, I could tell from where it was. I was like, he's going to win this race, and the bike throw just sold it. You know what I mean? That's what got him through. And I mean, he had a good half a tire, or half a wheel, when he threw. So it wasn't like it was a complete 1 incher, 2 incher. I mean, he beat him, and he beat two of the best riders in the world right now. The current Olympic champion, current world champion, current Tour de France champion, current Giro champion. All right, like these are serious riders, and that was a huge win for that team. They've been dominating throughout these races, these classics races, and my hats off to Little Trek because they have absolutely made a mark this spring, and this one is my favorite by far.
Yeah, another example, just like with the Bredevald win, of like one of the other riders on a big superstar team getting a little taste of the glory. Um, because Skelmos he's been racing this spring. I mean, he's been all over lots of races,
Mm-hmm.
and could have come close in Brabantse Pale, but he crashed on like a slick road there towards the end, and ended up dropping back to top 15 or something. Um, I I see the sprint win a little bit differently than you do. I mean, you say you could just like tell that he was going to win that sprint. I don't think there was any. I couldn't just tell. I mean, the way I saw it, he number one, he had the least expectation of the three guys, so he had to be the most relaxed, right? Because the other two guys are these superstars and people are expecting them to win. Nobody in the world was expecting him to win, just like nobody was expecting Nilson Palace to beat Wout Van Aert a week or two ago. Um, so that builds in a comfort level that enabled him on to sit on the wheel until the very, very last moment. You know what I mean? Like he could just chill and just get as much of a free ride from Pogacar as he possibly could. And I think he kind of just timed his throw a little bit better than Tade because, and also though, I think he just had it in the legs, just in a general sense, more so because Remco sat down twice during the sprint, and Pog sat down once during the sprint, and Skelmos never sat down during the sprint. So he timed it perfectly. Didn't release, didn't get up out of the saddle until the very, very, very end when he came around, and it was played exactly perfectly.
My
But
assumption before they started sprinting was that I honestly felt like Remco was going to probably pull out third because I just assumed Pogacar would blow the other two of them away, and I thought that Skelmos looked better and has been stronger of late, and I had more in the tank for Skelmos than Remco. Although, look, I'm not going to take anything away from Remco. Little bastard looks great. All right, like considering that, like if you've read any of the stuff about the training wreck that he had, and he said that this one was way worse than the
yeah,
wreck in the Basque Country,
yeah,
and
he hit an
that
open
the
door.
huh
He hit an open car door.
yeah. And he said the recovery has just been a lot harder this time than it was on the other one with the other big wreck last year. So to know that he is even more hurt than we realized, coming out, taking a solid win earlier in the week, and then pulling out a top three in this race when and I'm sure that I mean obviously expectations are always high for Remco, but I can't imagine that the team is like thinking he's going to come out on his second race day of the year and win the race against
A first and
Pogacar.
a third, a first and a third on his first two race days back, and one of them's Brabantse
Huge.
Pale and one of them's Amstel Gold. Like he's earning his paycheck for sure
Absolutely.
with that right there.
Absolutely.
Skelmos was in an utter state of disbelief after the finish. I don't know if you sort of like caught on
Hmm.
to that, like from the moment, like he had just the look on his face. He was just astonished, like it's just so funny. And then like I'm sitting there thinking to myself, like he can't, he really is having a hard time processing that he just won this race. And then uh when you heard his interview, he that's the first thing he said. He's like, I don't believe it. Like it's kind of funny. It, like confirmed what I was
So
thinking.
do you think that that means, like, do you think that the presence of Tadej Pogacar in the peloton has like an effect on the other riders, like just the fact that they, doubt themselves that they have the ability to beat him, that he is so becoming so prolific that like you're almost resigned to being like, well, I'm probably not going to beat him.
Yeah, how could it
And
not? You know.
but it's crazy because this is now multiple times so far this season where we have seen that he is vulnerable. There are times that do not suit Pogacar. Time will tell how this year will shape out once we get to the Tour and the Vuelta and see what he can do there. But
What watching this, I was having the thought like this is the Pogachar that I'm looking forward to watching in like 3 years when he's vulnerable, like when he's not just dominating everything. It's going to be so nice when some of these guys, when the Mathieu van der Poels and the Tadej Pogacars of the world are are vincible. You know what I mean?
right, right, right.
And we got a little taste of it today. It's interesting. It's
It
a
makes it so
yeah.
much better race. Like I just
Yeah,
the last 12 Ks of this race were awesome. All right,
so good.
awesome. I mean, edge of your seat, completely excited. I'm screaming at the TV, like, I literally couldn't ask for more.
Yeah, and monument after monument, they just suck. Year after year, they suck. But hey, the seventh monument is just year after year delivers. Skelmos, I wanted to say, I find this so fascinating. The cross abilities of these riders these days. It's like just seeing Matthias Skelmos in a 3-up sprint, just it's just weird. You know what I mean? Like some just or seeing Lorena Vibas, climbing her ass off in these races, being in the mix at a Tour of Flanders. You know what I mean? I mean, she is a pure sprinter as long as the day is long or whatever. Like she and Skelmos, I have this picture in my head of him being like a mountains guy. You know what I mean? He's a GC guy. He's sent as a GC leader. So to see him winning Amstel Gold is just so odd, and I just kind of
Just
I
I
love
just
seeing that.
God, I'd love to see him. I'd love to see him to be a factor in the Tour. God, that would
Yeah,
make my Tour. If he was like somehow in the mix with those guys, God, it'd be so great.
absolutely. All
Any
right, well,
any
we need to
GC
wrap.
battle in the Tour that doesn't end in some sort of domination is all my hope for the Tour this year.
Please, please, please. Let's wrap it up there. I have just one more thing to say, and that is Wout Van Forth. Stay with us. We'll be back to talk weed. He came in fourth again.
I know, I know.
Don't miss the Team Bus, our weekly companion podcast to the main Beyond the Slipstream show. Our domestique, if you will, dropping every Wednesday in your usual podcast feed.
In 1996, voters in California legalized marijuana for medical use when they voted through Proposition 215. It took another 14 years before two states, Colorado and Washington State, made the recreational use of marijuana legal, and that really got the ball, or should I say the joint, rolling. As of right now, 24 states in the District of Columbia have fully legalized for medical and recreational, while 21 states have some kind of mixed legality status, and only 4 states, South Carolina, Kansas, Nebraska, and Idaho, are still living in the dark ages, with Mary Jane being fully illegal. Our home state of Maryland is thankfully fully legal, and your adopted state and state of residence, Pennsylvania, is legal for medical but has not decriminalized recreational use yet. It's safe to say that both of us began using this beautiful and ancient natural substance before California's landmark vote in 96. So we've witnessed this incredible transition from the ground level. For my part, I have to say that it sure is nice to be able to go into a store any day of the week and legally purchase a high quality product that is exactly what I'm expecting it to be. Because, man, that certainly wasn't my reality for a couple of decades there. Justin, what was the sketchiest situation you ever found yourself in when trying to buy weed in the before times?
There were many sketchy purchases over the years, but one specifically, comes to mind of feeling like I never wanted to be in that situation again. And I was in high school. I was working at a local restaurant, and there was a couple of there was a waitress that worked there that I became friends with, and she was, married, and I became friends with her and her husband. And her husband provided me access to a level of weed that I was just absolutely unaccustomed to. So at the time, obviously, I was a young person, very limited as far as the resources of what was available to me. And, I met this guy, and the quality of what he was smoking was, literal light years away from what I was smoking. And he was getting it through a friend of his who was Jamaican, like, straight off the boat, Bamakla Rasman. And also became kind of friends with him. And at one point, he asked me to take him to get weed because I drove and he didn't. I had a car. And so I was like, okay, I agreed to it because I figured, at best I will get to buy some. At, even better than that, I will, maybe get some for free or, whatever. And being a high school kid, like that was pretty important. So I picked this guy up like in like I believe it was like the College Park or Hyattsville area. I think it was where he lived, and he's like, okay, and he just starts giving me directions, and I'm like, as we're getting further and further, like I'm kind of clocking where we are, but I kind of don't know where we are pretty quickly. And where we end up is A Street in Texas in the district. And that is not necessarily a great neighborhood, at least back in 1990, probably 6 or 7 when this is. And we kind of pull up in this little project area, and this guy's like, okay, he's like, stay here, but do me a favor, put your seat down. Okay, because people will probably get weirded out that there's a white kid sitting in a car. So he's like, lay your seat back. I'll be back in 5 minutes. He didn't come back for an hour. And while everything worked out and it was perfectly fine and he came back and we left, it was the longest hour of my life being a lily white kid from the suburbs, in the heart of, the very kind of deepest part of the ghetto in DC at the time, in an area that I was very unfamiliar with. And so I remember thinking in that moment, like, I don't ever want to put myself in this situation again. And I don't think I ever did put myself in that sketchy of a situation ever again. But, to see where we're at now it's such a stark difference to, what you were willing to do or what, concessions to your own personal safety that you were willing to make to be able to get, some weed back in the day. What about you?
I don't know that I had anything ever quite that sketchy. I mean, I certainly went to apartments of people that I did not know, and just that in and of itself is, pretty dangerous. I mean, you go into somebody's apartment, you don't know who's there, you don't know what they got, you don't know the lay of the land. So certainly could have gotten myself into trouble, and thankfully did not. But for me, it was more of like the drought periods that were the sort of most frustrating part of it. It's like, especially once I was graduated college, and I don't know, I guess we kind of found its way to college campuses back in the day, so it didn't seem like it was as difficult to get it then. And also, I was sort of a tangential user at that point. It was kind of always around. And so, like, I don't recall having like equipment or anything like that when I was in college. I just kind of, would go to my buddies' places and people would be doing bong rips, and that was that. Um, but once I was out of college and like living with my buddies, it was, we didn't have the network, and like you had to go and find it, and you'd sort of bounce from connection to connection, and you'd find a guy and he'd be great for a while, and then suddenly he'd just disappear off the face of the earth, or his guy can't get it anymore, and it was just this like frustrating cycle of like just always being on the hunt. And then what happened with me, I got a great story I love to tell about how like I was getting it from a buddy of mine, and it was just like the most solid connection forever for like 2 straight years. My roommates just couldn't believe our good fortune, because I was just like, don't worry guys, I got you, just I'll take care of it, I'll let you know what you need to give me. And everybody was happy. And it came um the product, according to my buddy, was coming from this mythical guy. I'll call him Carl. And Carl was just, he was just the guy, and he was just always reliable. And my buddy just had to call him, and Carl would come through. Like next day, he'd be good to go. And when my buddy moved out of town, I went to him and I said, "Man, is there any way you can hook me up with Carl?" And he said, "Yeah, I'll give him a call, let him know." And so, he put me in touch with Carl. I went to Carl's place one night. I called him. I told him who I was. I told him about my buddy. He said, "Yeah, yeah, come on by." And I went down to his place, and he was living in this like nice apartment building that was like kind of in a sketchy part of town, but the building itself was nice. His apartment was really nice when I got up there, and I made the wise decision of buying a 12 pack of Heineken bottles. I'll never forget that. And I kind of stuffed it into my courier bag that I used to carry back then, and went up to his place. Didn't say anything about it. Made my purchase. He was keeping his stuff in the refrigerator. He had like great big Tupperware full of like swag weed, and then he had a couple of smaller Tupperwares with like the good stuff in it. And I said, give me like an eighth of each of the good ones, and I'll take an ounce of the swag stuff. And so he's like, cool, and he weighs it all out very carefully, and it's got very specific prices, and completely transact our business. And then when we were done, I opened up my bag. I said, "Oh, hey, by the way, I brought this down for you." And this dude, you would have thought I just, handed him a diamond encrusted typewriter. I don't know. He couldn't believe that I had just brought a 12 pack of beer and was just giving it to him as a gift. Like it made no logical sense to him whatsoever. And, he's like, what is this for? And I said, you're going to be hearing from me a lot. Like, we're regular users, and I just want to make sure that, we're getting things off on the right foot. So, just a little gift. And he's like, "Oh man, all right, yeah, you call me anytime, buddy. Call me anytime." After that, literally every single time I went there after that, there was no scale, there was no measuring anything out. I was just like, "I'll take the usual," and it was like a handful of both of the good ones and a great big handful of the swag, and it was probably twice the quantity I got before. So, um, so yeah, I don't want this to devolve into just like a greatest hits of like our weed experiences, because I do want to kind of talk a little bit more about like where we're at now. For my part, I just think it's interesting how mainstream it has gotten, how ubiquitous it is, how you hear people on podcasts, celebrities, everybody talking about it, and I mean, I kind of love that. It's for years it just seems so silly that like, oh, marijuana is illegal, but alcohol is legal, and alcohol, on its face seems to have like way worse consequences than marijuana and all this kind of stuff. And all of that goes back to racism, and, the history of the laws go back to, get back to racism and stuff like that. So,
Yeah, there's many great weed documentaries that you can go out and get an education on, on the history of the legality of weed and why it is the way that it is and why it was stigmatized the way that it was. But I think it's interesting in this new day and age that with regulation, obviously comes a difference in quality of product. You know, obviously, these dispensaries that are, being regulated at a state level have regulations that they need to follow. So, that the product is better than what, you were getting on the street, and it gets, tested and, all of this stuff. But it also, just like anything else that becomes regulated, there are issues, in my opinion, with what is going on right now. The 2018 Farm Bill really created a situation in the United States that I think a lot of people just don't understand. There is essentially, if you label your product as hemp and you are going off of THCA, which is the pre kind of what they call carboxylated weed like measurement, you could pretty much sell whatever you want. And right now in the United States, there's dozens, if not many dozen companies that are selling legalized hemp, and it's actually just marijuana, and they're selling it legally across the United States through the mail. It's 50 states legal, and there's very little regulation on that, which to me creates its own kind of like scary gray area now, where you have very well regulated programs in California and many other states that have the legal weed, and then your medical marijuana states, that stuff's even more regulated. But across the country right now, you can go on the internet and buy weed and concentrates and carts and all these things, and they all fall under this 2018 Farm Bill. And essentially it's legalized nationally, but it's not recognized. And that to me is a scary thing, because they're allowing these people to operate. They're allowing these people to do this stuff, do what they're doing. There is way less regulations on that than there is on everything else. So who knows what these people are consuming, and they're being told that it's legal. All right. And it sort of is, and it also sort of isn't, because you can go buy that shit, get arrested, and start smoking on the street in an illegal state, and you're still going to get arrested for marijuana use. You're still going to pop for a marijuana drug test. It's not any different. And that is a thing where it goes back to the same thing for me over and over and over again with legalization, which is, it's okay that, we have essentially legalized sports gambling across the United States, which is guaranteed more detrimental to society than marijuana. Alcohol is legal, prescription pills are legal, and yet this plant that our body is literally genetically designed to accept and, can benefit people in not one way, but, many, many different ways for different people, especially from a medical standpoint, is completely still at this point stigmatized. And, because of its classification as a Schedule I drug, which is really the biggest thing that we need to get over, it can't be medically researched for its real potential benefits. And a lot of that comes from bureaucracy, nonsensical government regulation, and a push back from, pharmaceutical companies that want to keep us on these synthetic drugs and keep us using these things when there may be a natural alternative to a lot of this stuff. And there are some major medical benefits, especially in, seizure disorders and head injury disorders that, we don't understand what the possibilities of this plant and its uses are, because we can't get our heads out of our asses to reclassify what this actually is. And the fact that it's classified in the same category as cocaine and heroin and methamphetamines is completely ridiculous.
Are you saying that like big corporations are making something suck?
Oh, wait, yeah, yeah, that's exactly what I'm
That's
saying.
that's, that's so weird. Well, I, I I agree with everything you just said. I take issue with one thing. It is not completely stigmatized any longer, as you said. I mean, it's that's kind of the great thing about what's happening now is that it's becoming less and less and less stigmatized. I mean, there's only 4 states that are still have it fully illegal. Surprise, surprise. South Carolina, Kansas, Nebraska, and Idaho. We all know which way the political leanings in those states go, so it's no surprise that those are the only holdouts. But I mean, the fact that you hear celebrities talking about I took a gummy last night and blah blah blah, like it's definitely come a long way, become way more mainstreamed, and I think it happened at a moment that was kind of fortuitous with as all the evils of social media that we hear about. Um, there are obviously some good upsides to it, and I think social media has certainly helped the destigmatization of marijuana and marijuana products because in social media there are niches, there are little micro communities and subsets of people that get into their thing and get into it very very deeply and can get exposure on a large platform. So um, between between that and the Instagramification of the world, the way that the retail markets have gone, I I think it sort of happened at a ripe moment. What I'm hoping for, aside from more legalization, I mean, I'd like to see just like national legalization, period, fully,
It's what should
full
happen.
legalization, medical, recreational, and have it pulled down from that schedule of drug categories. But once we're there, the other thing that I want to see is I'd like to see the stores where they sell it just not be so weird. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I want it to be, I don't want it to be hidden behind the counter. Like, I just want to be able to go in and shop for weed the same exact way that I shop for anything else. And now it's like you got to go through and give the ID and go into the back part of the place and get in the line, and it's just um,
It's very pharmaceutical.
yeah, it's just kind of weird. So I would like to mainstream it a little bit further in terms of like the consumer interface.
The you know you have 15% of the United States right now regularly uses cannabis. So you're talking probably 40ish 40ish million people right now are habitual marijuana users with couldn't Lord knows how many people in the periphery of that number. But again, at the end of the day, you know, and this is the part that kind of bums me out about it is while we've made so many strides in the right direction, these guys, these marijuana businesses still can't operate like everybody else because of the classification of it.
Yeah,
They
you
can't.
gotta
They
pay
can't.
cat, you gotta pay cash here. Like,
What's
come on,
It's not even just that. It's not just that. They can't bank the way that a regular business banks. All
right?
right. There is weird regulations around how what they can do with their money. And the sad thing is that means that the only people that can afford to do all of this are big companies. And that really sucks because especially in California, you have a lot of like small, like they have a very deep culture of growers. Um, and there's probably people out there that can make a really great product, but because they're not part of this giant, commercial, weed, business structure where these big companies like, Cresco Yeltran and, they're one of the bigger ones. There's a couple of these big multi-state companies that are out there. It's, there's no path for the capitalistic aspect of anybody can get into this business. All right. It is 100% still kind of, even with what it is, it's still kind of closed off to the little guy, which is sad because it shouldn't. That's
Wait,
not,
you're,
to me, that's
you're
it's not how America should be.
so
But
you're saying that big corporations mess something up?
again, Again, yes,
You're saying that our government has made things much easier for big corporations than the small business person? I can't imagine that.
Yeah, it's
so
such a
strange.
weird concept in the United States. The reality is, though, for me, we are in a way better place than we were, 10 years ago, a much better place than we were 20 years ago. But I think we still have a far way to go. And I think that the more access that you give, and the more access that the public has, the more likely that somebody that it could benefit will try it is much higher. And so, again, to me, the number one fight right now is just reclassifying it, getting it off of Schedule 1, moving it to, probably a Schedule 3 type of drug so that better testing, can happen. And you're right, 50 state legalization, national legalization needs to happen. You know what I mean? But, marijuana for years has been big business, and it's in the business of prisons. You know what I mean? Incarceration is big money, and they know that if they reverse this stuff, that there are a lot of people that are incarcerated right now that will need to be, freed if it's legalized. So, there's a lot of different angles of why this thing is not happening. But, it is a beautiful thing that I can take my medical, I should have brought it out, my medical marijuana card into, into the store and, get my medicine without fear of having to go do something shady to get it. And, I know for me, as someone that, doesn't, genetically speaking, opiates are not a great, don't really work for me. Having, marijuana for pain is a very good thing. And there's a lot of people that can, benefit from it. So, hopefully more and more conversations will be had.
Well, I think that's a great place to leave it. Next time you're in town, we will go down to Texas Avenue and A Street just to relive old times. So we're going to leave it there. But in honor of this blessed day of 420, yeah, it's also Easter. We'll acknowledge that too. Let's go get our minds right, and we'll be right back with another ride in the Broom Wagon. Stay with us. All right, we are back, and we are ready for a hilly Ardennes style ride in the Broom Wagon. What have you got for us, Justin?
So I don't really like to get on my soapbox very much, but I just want to say something, just considering the current climate in our country right now, and my message to everybody is we need to be more kind. All right, especially, to anybody in this country that has, a pigment other than white in their skin. I think it's a very scary time in this right now for immigrants in the United States. And, I would urge everybody in this country to remember that this country was founded on immigration, on people coming here to escape something in their own country or to find a freedom to be able to be what they want and who they want. And that is the backbone of what this nation stands for. And it is absolutely disgusting, all right, to think that we are now, deporting, scaring, incarcerating people of color, people of different ethnicities, all right, just based on where they came from or what tattoos are on their skin, all right. That is not to say that there are not scary individuals among us, but there always have been and there always will be, all right. But please, be kind to your neighbors. Be kind to, everybody. Don't make assumptions about why somebody is in our country if you don't know. You know what? Have a conversation, all right? learn something. Try to be less scared of the thing that is scaring you. Because 100 years ago, the people that you came from were probably from another country, or 200 years ago. All right. And what we need more now is love, not hate. And on a daily basis, all I see is hate being spewed on television, on social media, and everywhere. And we are falling backwards in this country right now. So, my preachy broom wagon topic is love your neighbor. All right. Because that's what we should be doing. All right. Help your neighbors. All right. Be kind to other people, because you might not understand what they're going through because it doesn't affect you. And it doesn't mean that it's not happening to them. And that's really all I got today.
Amen, brother. Don't forget, Jesus was a brown guy.
100%. Especially on this day of Easter. It's just sad. It's sad to me to see the things that are going on right now, and how the people that are supposed to be looking out for us are 100% turning a blind eye to it, and then telling you to turn a blind eye to it too. There's been many things this week that have really, really shaken me, as far as I can't believe that we're here. So, but be kind to your neighbor, because I tell you what, if their skin color is different than yours, they're probably scared right now. And there isn't anything worse than being scared in the place where you live.
Yeah. I always think in this, one of the recurring thoughts that I've always had, when people discriminate or, look down on or harass immigrants, is that, like you said, people come to this country because they're trying to escape something. And for any parent of a person to look down on immigrants for having come here, ask yourself this: if your country was under threat, if your life was under threat, if you didn't have a safe place to be, if you had no opportunity to feed your children, to care for your children, if your children were being threatened, you would do whatever it takes to ensure their safety and to get them to a better life. And for many millions of these people that come to this country, that is why they are coming, because they have children who they're trying to care for and give a better life. And don't act like you wouldn't do it if you were in that situation. It is the epitome of hypocrisy. Anyways, thank you for sharing that. I agree wholeheartedly. I'm going to lighten the mood with my
I figured as much.
my broom wagon today. So big podcast guy, always have been, always on the hunt for something new, something interesting. So I'm going to go ahead and recommend a podcast today. Shout out to my man Clyde the Pool, who just made this recommendation to me yesterday, but I need only listen to one episode to happily recommend this thing. It is called One Song, and it is a podcast a week format, like BTS here. And they just take a song and pick it apart. And Clyde recommended it. I stuck it right into the feed immediately, and episode popped up this morning, and I listened to it. The one I listened to this morning was Mountain Song by Jane's Addiction. You know that one? Coming down the mountain. And song I love, band I love. They totally get into the entire history and formation of the band, who the members are, and then they go deep into the song. This is not a new premise by any means. I've listened to, I'll point out two sort of podcasts along these lines. One of them is Song Exploder. This is a very popular podcast. It's been around for years and years. And it is essentially doing the same thing. I think that one may involve an interview with the person who wrote the song, if memory serves. So it's like the the songs they choose, they go out and get that artist, and another one that I love, another show I love is called Dissect. And this is this guy Cole Kushner, and he'll take an entire album and he'll do a full episode for each song on the album, and sometimes more than one. Sometimes like the song will be so dense that it'll break it up into 2 episodes to cover one 3.5 minute song. I mean, it's insane. The level, the granularity that this guy gets into. At the same time, incredible, and he leans a lot on hip hop. He did do some Radiohead, and he's done some other stuff, but mostly it's hip hop. I listened to the full season of I think it was Lemonade for Beyonce, but the one that really really loved was Kendrick Lamar, Damn, and just awesome show. So yeah, not the first podcast to do deep dives into individual songs. But I like what these guys are bringing. It's 2 guys. It's Diallo Riddle and Baron Von Luxury are the 2 guys hosting this show.
Name.
And I think what I like what they bring to their cool twist that they bring to this thing, is that they isolate the parts. Like that is sort of the thing that they are building towards in the episode. It's because they kind of reference, and when we get to the, I can't remember what the exact word they use is, but it's basically like they pull out the audio and isolate each of the different parts that the members are playing, and then they talk about it. So they chopped up the bass line, they chopped up the guitar line, they chopped up the lyric, like really really cool, the drums, all of it. And that's not. I think Cole Kushner does that a little bit on Dissect, but like they really really focus on it in this podcast. So that was pretty cool. How could I not like it when I go and I look at I go back to the beginning of the show and I look at the first 3 episodes, and it's New Order, Blue Monday, Notorious B.I.G., Mo Money, Mo Problems, and the Smiths, How Soon Is Now. I'm like, okay, I'm in. I'll be listening to this entire.
Those are
catalog.
the first 3 songs that they dissected.
There's the first. Yeah, there's the first 3 on there. So
those are
yeah.
Those are huge songs.
Yeah,
Each one of them
absolutely.
in their own right, insanely big songs.
Yeah. So I'm super stoked. I hope they get into those are both right down the strike zone for me. So I hope they get a little bit broader. I honestly did not dig into the full list because I was pressed for time, but
there's nothing wrong with being right down the middle.
Absolutely. I like these shows where the episodes are not tied into a particular event or time frame that can just be exist throughout all space and time. And yeah, it's nice to have a show like this where you can just go and just throw 5 episodes at a time into your feed and just start breaking it off until you've listened through the whole thing. So yeah, big recommendation for the podcast, One Song. And we're going to pause right there, blah, 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 because right here is when I'm going to be like, and that's all for today, and we'll do the outro. But
okay,
I guess we could do the outro now.
You could.
Outro has nothing to do with what's happening racist today.
Just next week. So do me a favor. Say one song, because that was the last thing you said before you went into that blah 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 blah. So say one song, and then go, and I will try to marry those 2 things together when I edit it.
You don't think? I mean, I feel like I took enough of a pause after I said it that you can just go in there and chop it right there.
Okay. I didn't realize it was going to happen, so I wasn't completely paying attention. But if you're telling me there's a pause, then go ahead.
Because I know I was sitting there thinking, what am I supposed to? Oh yeah, the outro. Oh yeah,
I was waiting for you to do it.
Yeah, so I just kind of forgot that I had actually written that the other day. It's pretty much ready to go. So I'll just do it. You can mash them together.
That's fine.
All right. And that is all for this week. Join us next week for complete women's and men's coverage of the madness on the Mer de Huy at Flèche Wallonne, the madness on the Côte de la Redoute, the iconic climb of the last monument race of the spring, Liège-Bastogne-Liège. Let me do that again. I need to say and the madness on the Côte de la Redoute. All right. Murder-wee. All right, here we go.
Bien de vie.
And that is all for this week. Join us next week for complete women's and men's coverage of the madness on the Murder-wee at Flèche Wallonne and the madness on the Côte de la Redoute, the iconic climb of the last monument race of the spring, Liège-Bastogne-Liège. Until then, for my brother Justin, I'm Matt Harper. Thanks for listening. We hope you'll join us again soon on another ride beyond the slipstream. Allez!
Beyond the Slipstream is a production of Harperama. Find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Please like and subscribe, smash that button, leave a 5-star review, and most importantly, tell all your friends about us. Thanks for listening. Talk to you next time. Allez!